A millionaire woman mocked at cooking class, then revealed she owns a Michelin-Star restaurant. The morning sun filtered through the large windows of the Culinary Arts Community Center in downtown Portland, Oregon, casting warm light across the rustic wooden tables and well-worn cooking stations. The aroma of fresh herbs and simmering stock filled the air as a dozen eager students gathered for the homestyle cooking basics class, each carrying their own hopes of mastering fundamental culinary skills. Among them stood Isabella Chen, a petite woman in her early 40s whose understated appearance belied her extraordinary background. She had chosen simple jeans and a plain white cotton shirt, her long black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her hands, though manicured, bore the subtle calluses and small scars that spoke of countless hours spent in professional kitchens, details that went unnoticed by her fellow students. Isabella had deliberately selected this community center class over the upscale culinary academies that would have welcomed her with open arms. After years of existing within the rarefied world of haute cuisine, she yearned for something authentic, a chance to rediscover the joy of cooking without the pressure of perfection, to connect with people who shared her passion for food rather than her bank account. The instructor, Chef Rodriguez, was a jovial man in his 50s who had spent decades working in neighborhood restaurants before dedicating himself to teaching. His approach was warm and encouraging, designed to build confidence rather than intimidate. As he welcomed the class, Isabella felt a familiar flutter of excitement, the same feeling she had experienced decades ago when she first stepped into a professional kitchen as a young culinary student. But her peaceful anonymity was short-lived. As the students began introducing themselves, Isabella's simple statement that she was interested in learning traditional cooking techniques was overshadowed by the arrival of two particular classmates who would define her experience that morning. Brenda Martinez, a woman in her late 30s with perfectly styled hair and an extensive collection of designer kitchen gadgets, had positioned herself as the unofficial leader of the group. Her introduction had been lengthy and detailed, cataloging her food blog, her Instagram following, and her plans to eventually open a catering business. She surveyed the room with the confidence of someone who had never doubted her place in any social hierarchy. Beside her stood Kevin Thompson, a stocky man in his early 40s who worked in construction and prided himself on his practical knowledge of real cooking. His introduction had emphasized his blue-collar background and his skepticism of fancy cooking techniques, establishing himself as the voice of authentic, working-class cuisine. When Isabella quietly mentioned that she enjoyed experimenting with different cooking methods, Brenda's expression shifted to barely concealed amusement. The woman's sharp eyes had immediately cataloged Isabella's expensive watch, her quality leather handbag, and the subtle markers of wealth that Isabella had tried to downplay. In Brenda's world, money and cooking skill were inversely related. More someone could afford to eat out, the less they likely knew about actual cooking. Kevin's assessment was even more direct. He had spent years working alongside wealthy homeowners who couldn't operate their own high-end appliances, and he had developed a particular disdain for what he called checkbook cooking, the assumption that expensive ingredients and equipment could substitute for genuine skill and experience. As Chef Rodriguez began the first lesson on basic knife skills, Isabella found herself under constant scrutiny. When she selected a knife from the communal set, Brenda loudly wondered whether she was comfortable with something so basic, after probably being used to fancy electric gadgets. The comment drew chuckles from several other students who had begun to adopt the same dismissive attitude toward their apparently privileged classmate. Isabella's knife work, however, told a different story. Her fingers moved with the unconscious precision of someone who had performed these movements thousands of times, her blade finding the perfect angle and rhythm without thought or hesitation. She diced onions with mechanical efficiency, her cuts uniform and clean, her movements economical and purposeful. But rather than earning respect, Her obvious skill only intensified the mockery. Kevin loudly speculated that she had probably watched a lot of cooking shows and was trying to show off. Brenda suggested that having a personal chef probably meant she learned by watching, her tone dripping with condescension. The situation deteriorated further when Chef Rodriguez demonstrated basic sautéing techniques. Isabella's pan heated evenly, her oil reached the perfect temperature, and her ingredients moved with the practiced rhythm of professional cooking. She added seasonings with the kind of intuitive measurement that comes from years of experience, adjusting heat and timing with subtle precision. Yet her classmates interpreted her competence as pretension. Brenda loudly whispered to Kevin about rich people who think they're better than everyone else, while other students began to openly question whether Isabella was really there to learn, or simply to show off her expensive culinary education. Breaking point came during a discussion about flavor profiles, when Isabella quietly mentioned that she found the combination of ingredients reminiscent of classical French techniques, but with interesting regional variations. The room fell silent. Brenda's face flushed with embarrassment and anger, interpreting Isabella's comment as deliberate intellectual superiority. What followed was a careful campaign of social exclusion. When Chef Rodriguez asked students to pair up for the next exercise, Isabella found herself consistently left out. Conversations quieted when she approached, and her attempts to offer helpful suggestions were met with cold politeness or outright dismissal. The cruelest moment came when Brenda, emboldened by the group's apparent support, made a loud comment about people who probably have never cooked a meal for their own family and wouldn't know how to make a simple sandwich without calling for help. The laughter that followed was mean-spirited and deliberate, designed to reinforce Isabella's status as an outsider. Isabella absorbed each slight with the kind of professional composure she had learned during her rise through the notoriously brutal restaurant industry. She had faced far worse criticism from demanding food critics and temperamental celebrity chefs, but this personal attack on her authenticity struck deeper than professional criticism ever had. As the first half of the class concluded, Isabella stood alone at her cooking station, surrounded by the evidence of her superior technique, but isolated by her classmates' assumptions and prejudices. The irony was profound. She had come seeking authentic connection through their shared love of food, only to find herself rejected by the very people she had hoped to understand. Chef Rodriguez, focused on his lesson plan and managing the entire class, had missed the subtle social dynamics playing out among his students. He saw only that Isabella was clearly skilled and that some personality conflicts seemed to be developing, but he attributed it to the normal adjustment period of a new class. Isabella began to question her decision to attend the class. She had genuinely hoped to rediscover the simple joy of cooking alongside people who shared her passion, but instead found herself trapped in a situation that seemed to validate every cynical assumption about wealth and class that she had encountered. Throughout her career, as the students prepared for the second half of the class, Isabella made a quiet decision. She would complete the session, but not in the way anyone expected. The mockery and exclusion had awakened something in her, not anger, but a desire to demonstrate that passion for food transcended social boundaries, and that true expertise was earned through dedication rather than circumstance. The afternoon session began with Chef Rodriguez announcing a special challenge. Each student would prepare a dish that represented their personal cooking philosophy, using only the basic ingredients available in the community center kitchen. The exercise was designed to showcase creativity and fundamental skills rather than expensive ingredients or specialized equipment. Isabella surveyed the humble pantry with the practiced eye of someone who had built a culinary empire on the foundation of transforming simple ingredients into extraordinary experiences. She saw not limitations, but possibilities, the kind of creative constraints that had originally sparked her love of cooking decades ago. While her classmates debated their choices and worried about impressing Chef Rodriguez, Isabella began working with quiet intensity. She selected ingredients that seemed almost random to the untrained eye. Basic vegetables, simple proteins, common herbs and spices. But her selections followed a precise logic that would soon become apparent. Brenda had chosen to prepare an elaborate pasta dish, determined to prove her superiority with complex flavors and impressive presentation. Kevin decided on a hearty stew that he claimed represented real American cooking. Other students selected dishes that reflected their comfort zones and familiar techniques. Isabella, however, began creating something that defied easy categorization. She started with a simple protein preparation that seemed almost elementary, but her technique revealed layers of sophistication. Her hands moved with the unconscious precision of muscle memory, each action purposeful and economical. As she worked, her classmates began to notice something extraordinary happening at her station. The simple ingredients she had selected were being transformed through techniques that seemed to bend the laws of basic cooking. Her knife work was not just competent, it was art in motion, each cut precise and deliberate. Her understanding of heat, timing, and flavor development was becoming impossible to ignore. The first crack in the wall of dismissal came when the aroma from Isabella's station began to fill the room. It was unlike anything that should have been possible with the available ingredients complex, layered, sophisticated. The scent spoke of techniques that went far beyond basic cooking, suggesting a depth of knowledge that couldn't be faked or learned from television. Chef Rodriguez, who had been circulating among the students, offering encouragement and guidance, found himself drawn repeatedly to Isabella's station. His expression shifted from casual interest to professional fascination as he watched her work. Her technique was flawless, her approach innovative, her results extraordinary. When Isabella began plating her dish, the room gradually fell silent. What emerged was not just food, but edible art, a composition that balanced visual beauty with aromatic complexity, demonstrating a level of skill that belonged in the world's finest restaurants rather than a community center kitchen. The presentation was elegant in its simplicity, sophisticated in its execution. Every element served a purpose, every garnish contributed to the overall harmony. The dish represented years of training, decades of experience, and an intuitive understanding of flavor that could not be taught in any classroom. Chef Rodriguez tasted Isabella's creation first, his expression transforming from professional courtesy to genuine amazement. The flavors were extraordinarily complex, balanced, innovative. This was not the work of an amateur or even an advanced home cook. This was the creation of someone who understood food at the deepest level, who could coax magic from the simplest ingredients. As the other students tasted Isabella's dish, their mockery dissolved into stunned silence. The food spoke for itself, telling a story of expertise that could not be dismissed or explained away. This was not luck, not beginner's enthusiasm, not the result of watching cooking shows. This was mastery. The revelation began slowly, with Chef Rodriguez asking careful questions about Isabella's background. Her answers were modest but revealing. She had worked in restaurants for many years and had always been passionate about food. But the evidence on the plate suggested a story far more significant than she was admitting. Kevin, his earlier confidence shattered, found himself unable to reconcile the extraordinary dish with his assumptions about wealthy amateurs. Brenda, whose own pasta had seemed impressive until this moment, struggled to understand how someone she had dismissed could create something so clearly superior. The truth emerged through a series of small revelations. Chef Rodriguez, whose professional network included many of the region's top culinary professionals, began to piece together clues. Isabella's technique was not just competent, it was distinctive, bearing the hallmarks of classical French training, combined with innovative modern approaches. When Chef Rodriguez mentioned that Isabella's flavor profile reminded him of dishes he had tasted at Le Bernardin during a recent trip to New York, Isabella's composed expression flickered for just a moment. The connection was made when he noted that the technique seemed similar to work he had seen from Chun's table, the legendary 3 Michelin-Star restaurant that had revolutionized fine dining on the West Coast. The revelation came not through dramatic announcement, but through the gradual accumulation of undeniable evidence. Isabella Chun was not just skilled, she was Isabella Chun, the owner and head chef of Chun's Table, one of the most celebrated restaurants in the world. Her establishment had held 3 Michelin stars for 8 consecutive years, had been named Best Restaurant in America by numerous publications, and had waiting lists that extended months into the future. The woman they had mocked for her apparent wealth and assumed incompetence was actually one of the most respected chefs in the culinary world. Her fortune had not come from inheritance or marriage. It had been earned through decades of grueling work, innovative cooking, and unwavering dedication to her craft. The classroom dynamics shifted completely as the students began to understand the magnitude of their error. Isabella had not come to the class to show off or to condescend. She had genuinely sought to reconnect with the simple joy of cooking that had originally inspired her career. Their assumptions about wealth and skill had blinded them to the presence of someone who represented the very pinnacle of culinary achievement. Brenda, whose food blog suddenly seemed insignificant in comparison, found herself speechless. Kevin, who had prided himself on authentic cooking, realized he had dismissed someone whose authenticity was beyond question. The other students who had participated in the mockery began to understand that they had witnessed something extraordinary, a master chef sharing her passion in its purest form. Isabella's response to the revelation was characteristically gracious. She spoke quietly about her love of teaching, her respect for all forms of cooking, and her belief that passion for food was the only qualification that truly mattered. She had come to the class not as a celebrity chef, but as someone who remembered being a beginner herself, and who understood that every cook, regardless of skill level, deserved respect and encouragement. The afternoon concluded with Isabella offering individual guidance to each student, her feedback now received with the reverence appropriate to someone of her stature. But her approach remained unchanged, encouraging, respectful, focused on helping each person improve rather than showcasing her own superiority. As the class ended, the students filed out with a profound new understanding of the dangers of judging others by appearances. They had learned that true expertise often came without fanfare, that passion for food transcended social boundaries, and that the most accomplished practitioners were often the most humble about their achievements. Isabella Chun had sought a simple cooking class and found herself providing a masterclass in humility, skill, and the transformative power of pursuing excellence with genuine passion. Her classmates left not just with improved cooking techniques, but with a valuable lesson about the importance of looking beyond surface appearances, to recognize the extraordinary qualities that could exist in any person, regardless of their background or circumstances.
Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.